I went back to the kitchen because I had forgotten the knife to cut the cake. But when I reached the door, my granddaughter Chloe grabbed my arm forcefully. Her eyes were filled with panic, and she whispered something in my ear that made my blood run cold. "Grandma, you need to get away from your children immediately." I didn't understand anything. It was my 70th birthday. I had invited the whole family to my large house, the same one I had bought with so much effort after years of work. And now my own granddaughter was telling me I had to flee from my own children. The living room was filled with laughter and conversation. Arthur, my eldest son, was joking with his cousins while holding a glass of wine. Caroline, my younger daughter, was arranging the plates on the dining room table with that perfect smile she always had at family gatherings. Everything seemed normal, like any family celebration we had held for decades in this house. But the look of terror on Chloe's face told me that something was terribly wrong. "Why are you telling me that, my love?" I asked her in a low voice, trying to stay calm as my heart beat faster and faster. Chloe glanced toward the living room to make sure no one was watching us. Then she took out her cell phone with trembling hands. "Grandma, you have to see this. I installed some security cameras last month when I noticed things were going missing from the house. What I recorded is going to break your heart." The phone screen lit up, and I saw the image of my own living room, but empty. It was a recording from 2 days ago, when I had gone to the doctor for my monthly checkup. Suddenly, Arthur and Caroline appeared on the screen, sitting on the exact same sofa where they were now celebrating my birthday. But their faces did not show the family love I had always known. Their expressions were cold, calculating, filled with an ambition I had never seen in my own children. "We have to speed up the process," I heard Caroline's voice coming from the phone's small speaker. "Mom is getting sharper every day, and if she keeps this up, we'll never be able to convince a doctor that she needs special care." Arthur nodded as he drank from my most expensive bottle of whiskey. "The nursing home we visited on Friday is perfect. It's far enough away that she can't just walk back. And the director assured me that once she's admitted, it will be very difficult for her to get out." I felt as if the floor was opening up beneath my feet. My own children, the children I had raised with so much love and sacrifice, were planning to commit me to a nursing home against my will. "But Grandma," Chloe whispered, "this is just the beginning. There are more recordings, and they're worse." Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. How was it possible that the two human beings I trusted most in the world were conspiring against me in this way? On the screen, Caroline continued to speak with a coldness that took my breath away. "Once she's committed, we'll have legal power over all her properties. This house is worth over $500,000, and that's not counting her savings and the jewelry she has hidden in the safe." Arthur laughed with a cackle I had never heard before. A laugh without love, without humanity. "Mom was always too naive. She thinks we're the perfect children who will take care of her until the end. But the reality is, we need that money now, not when she dies of old age in 10 years. The phone trembled in my hands as I continued to watch my children destroy all the love I had built over 70 years of life. Chloe hugged me tightly, and I could feel her tears falling on my shoulder. "Grandma, I couldn't stay silent. I know this is going to hurt you, but you had to know before it was too late. They're going to act very soon." I remembered my life as if it were a movie flashing quickly before my eyes. I had been Eleanor Vance, the woman who built an empire from nothing. After being widowed 15 years ago, when my dear husband died in that car accident, I decided I wouldn't sink into sadness. I took the few savings we had and invested them in a small home-cooked meal business that I ran from my kitchen. For decades, I worked 16-hour days. I would get up at 4 in the morning to prepare casseroles, stews, and pies that I sold to construction workers and office employees downtown. My hands became calloused, my back ached from fatigue, but I never gave up. Arthur and Caroline were teenagers then, and I wanted to give them everything I never had: a college education, new clothes, family vacations. Over time, my small business grew into 3 successful restaurants. I hired employees, managers, and was finally able to retire at 65 with a considerable fortune. I bought this beautiful 2-story house with a garden, a pool, and 5 bedrooms. It was my palace, the symbol of all the effort and sacrifice I had made for my family. Arthur studied engineering thanks to my money. Caroline graduated as an accountant with honors, and I paid every cent of their tuition, their books, even their graduation parties. When Arthur got married, I gave him $50,000 for the down payment on his first house. When Caroline got divorced, I supported her financially for 2 years until she found a stable job. I was always the generous mother, the doting grandmother, the woman who never said no when my children needed help. On Sundays, they always came over for lunch. Arthur would arrive with his jokes and stories from work. Caroline would bring fresh flowers to decorate the dining room table. Chloe, my adored granddaughter, would stay for sleepovers on weekends, and I would teach her the family recipes I had perfected over the years. We were the picture-perfect family you see in magazines, united by love and tradition. My routine was simple but fulfilling. Every morning I would walk through the garden, watering my red roses and white geraniums. I would have coffee and toast for breakfast while reading the newspaper on the terrace. On Tuesdays, I went to the beauty salon where Brenda, my hairdresser and friend of 30 years, would do my hair while we chatted about our grandchildren and the neighborhood news. On Thursdays, I visited my doctor for my routine checkups, and he always congratulated me on my excellent health for a woman my age. I had my book club group that met every Friday at the public library. We played cards on Saturdays at the local park. My social life was active and full. I was respected in the neighborhood as Mrs. Eleanor, the successful businesswoman who had managed to raise her children alone after being widowed. The shopkeepers greeted me warmly. The neighborhood kids would ask me for candy when I walked down the street. My house always smelled of home cooking. I had a habit of cooking in large quantities because I never knew when Arthur or Caroline would show up hungry. The refrigerator was always stocked with their favorite dishes. The beef stew that Arthur liked, the chicken pot pie that Caroline adored since she was a child. My pantry was a treasure trove of imported spices and fresh ingredients I bought at the Central Market every Wednesday. At night, before going to sleep, I would check my finances on the computer that Chloe had taught me to use. My bank accounts were healthy. My investments were constantly growing. My properties were increasing in value every year. I felt proud to have built a solid legacy for my children and grandchildren. I thought that when my time came to leave this world, they would remember a mother who gave them everything, who worked tirelessly to secure their future. Every night, before turning off my bedside lamp, I thanked God for the wonderful family I had. Arthur with his stable job at the construction company, Caroline with her thriving accounting office, Chloe studying medicine with top grades. We were living proof that family love and hard work could create miracles. But now, standing in my kitchen while my birthday party continued in the living room, I realized that all that perfection had been a carefully constructed illusion. My children didn't see me as the loving mother who had sacrificed everything for them, but as an obstacle between them and my money. Chloe swiped her finger across the phone screen, and another recording appeared. This time, it was from last night, when I was already asleep. The camera showed the living room, lit only by the corner lamp. Arthur and Caroline were sitting on my favorite sofa, but this time they weren't alone. There was an older man in a gray suit whom I didn't recognize, and a blonde woman with a folder full of documents. "This is Dr. Marcus Thorne," Caroline explained, pointing to the man in the suit. "He's going to sign the papers certifying that Mom can no longer live alone. He says that with his testimony and some falsified medical reports, we can get legal guardianship in less than 2 weeks." My heart stopped. They were talking about stealing my freedom with fake documents, with elaborate lies concocted by a corrupt doctor. Dr. Thorne opened his briefcase and took out several forms. "I need you to give me specific details about her behavior. Has she shown signs of confusion? Does she forget important things? Has she had episodes of aggression?" Arthur laughed as he poured himself another glass of my whiskey. "Doctor, my mother is sharper than many people who are 50 years old. We'll have to make up the symptoms." Caroline took one of the forms and began to read. "It says here we need evidence of progressive cognitive decline. What if we say she leaves the stove burners on or gets lost when she goes for a walk?" The blonde woman, who turned out to be a corrupt social worker, nodded as she took notes. "Those are perfect symptoms. We also need witnesses to confirm that she poses a danger to herself and others." I felt nauseous listening to how they planned to destroy my reputation with lies. "And what about Chloe?" Arthur asked suddenly. She's always defending Mom. If she testifies against us, the whole plan goes down the drain." Caroline smiled with a coldness that took my breath away. "Chloe is studying medicine abroad thanks to Mom's money. If she doesn't cooperate with us, her university career is over. She'll understand which is the better option." Dr. Thorne took more papers out of his briefcase. "Once you have guardianship, I will recommend immediate admission to the Street Raphael nursing home. It's a private institution where I have contacts. Your mother will be well cared for, but she won't be able to make decisions about her properties or her finances." Arthur asked how much the whole process would cost. $50,000 for my silence and cooperation, the doctor replied, plus another $30,000 for the social worker and the court officials who will expedite the paperwork. Caroline didn't hesitate for a second. $80,000 is nothing compared to what we're going to inherit. This house is worth $500,000, plus her savings, plus the properties from the restaurants she sold. We're talking about over $1 million. The greed in her voice was so obvious it made me ashamed to think that this woman was my own daughter. The social worker opened her folder and showed official documents. "I already have declarations prepared from 3 neighbors who will testify that Mrs. Eleanor shows signs of senile dementia. Obviously, these neighbors will receive financial compensation for their cooperation." Arthur asked who these neighbors were. "The Connollys from the house next door, Mrs. Davis, who lives on the corner, and young Kevin, who works at the neighborhood store." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The Connollys were my neighbors for my entire life. We had shared Christmases and celebrations for decades. Mrs. Davis had been my confidant for years. She knew all my secrets and joys. Kevin was like a grandson to me. He always helped me with heavy groceries, and I would give him home-cooked food for his family. All of them were going to lie about my mental health in exchange for money. "The plan is simple," Caroline continued with a devilish smile. "Next week, we're going to create a situation where Mom appears confused or aggressive. We'll call Dr. Thorne to come and evaluate her, and he will determine that she needs immediate specialized care. An ambulance will take her directly to the nursing home, and we will take charge of all her assets that very afternoon." Arthur raised his glass in a macabre toast. "To Mom, who gave us everything without knowing it, and who will continue to give us everything until the end." Caroline clinked her glass against her brother's. "To the inheritance we deserve after years of pretending to love her." Their laughter echoed in my living room, like the sound of demons celebrating the destruction of an innocent soul. The recording ended, and Chloe quickly put the phone away because Arthur was approaching the kitchen. "Grandma, is the cake ready?" he asked with that fake smile I now recognized as the mask of a consummate actor. "I'm coming, my love," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, although my whole world had collapsed in the last 10 minutes. Chloe squeezed my hand discreetly before leaving the kitchen. Her eyes told me we had to talk later, that there were more secrets to reveal. But for now, I had to act as if nothing had happened, as if I didn't know that my own children were predators disguised as a loving family. I returned to the living room carrying the cake with the 70 lit candles, but my hands were shaking so much I almost dropped it. Everyone began to sing the "Happy Birthday" song, while I stood there like a statue, smiling automatically as my mind processed the greatest betrayal of my life. Arthur hugged me and kissed my cheek with that perfect performance he had been putting on for years. "Happy birthday, my dear Mom," he whispered in my ear with a voice full of false affection. Caroline approached in her elegant red dress and handed me an expensive bouquet of flowers. 70 years of a full life, Mom. You are our example of strength and wisdom." Her words sounded beautiful, but now I knew that every syllable was pure poison disguised as honey. How long had they been acting this way? When exactly did I stop being their mother and become their victim? As I blew out the candles and everyone applauded, my mind traveled to the past, searching for signs I had ignored. I remembered the day Arthur came to ask me for money to invest in a promising business. I gave him $50,000 without asking any questions because I trusted him blindly. Weeks later, when I asked him about his investment, he told me he had lost all the money but not to worry because he would pay me back when he could. He never paid back a single cent. I also remembered when Caroline got divorced 3 years ago. She came to my house crying, saying her husband had left her with nothing and that she needed financial support to start over. I paid her rent for her new apartment for 6 months, bought her new furniture, and even gave her money to take a vacation and heal her broken heart. But now I wondered if all of that had been another perfectly orchestrated performance. Did they ever really love me? Or was I always just a walking bank account to them? The question tortured me as I cut the cake and handed out slices to my guests. Every smile they gave me, every hug, every, "We love you, Mom," I heard that night sounded completely fake. It was as if a pair of rose-colored glasses I had worn for decades had been removed, and now I could see the raw, terrible reality. I began to remember small details that had previously seemed normal but now took on a sinister meaning. Arthur always asked me about my bank accounts, but I thought it was because he cared about my financial well-being. Caroline constantly suggested I make a will to be prepared, and I believed it was prudent on her part as an accountant. They had even convinced me to give them copies of my house keys in case of an emergency. Over the last few months, I had noticed that some of my jewelry had mysteriously disappeared. When I asked Arthur and Caroline, they told me I had probably put them away somewhere and had forgotten where. They made me feel as if I were losing my memory, as if I were a confused old woman who could no longer trust her own recollections. Now I understood they had been systematically stealing from me while convincing me it was my fault. I also remembered the time I found strange documents on my coffee table. When I asked Caroline what those papers were, she told me they were insurance forms she had brought from work by mistake, but now I suspected they were documents related to the plan to commit me. How long had they been preparing this betrayal? Months? Years? Fear began to take hold of me like a poison spreading through my veins. If they were capable of planning my commitment with such coldness, what else were they capable of? What if they decided that waiting for my natural death was too slow? What if they considered that speeding up the process was more convenient? The idea filled me with terror, but it no longer seemed impossible. I had seen the greed in their eyes. I had heard the total lack of love in their voices. Throughout the party, I watched every gesture, every word, every look that Arthur and Caroline exchanged. It was like watching a play where I was the only one who didn't know the script. They communicated with small signals, knowing smiles, seemingly innocent comments that I now knew had double meanings. "Mom, you have to take better care of yourself," Arthur would say as he poured me more wine. "You're not as young as you used to be," Caroline would add with that sweet smile that now gave me chills. As the guests began to leave, my anxiety grew. Soon we would be alone in the house, and I would have to act as if I knew nothing while they probably discussed more details of their diabolical plan. How was I going to sleep knowing that the two predators I had raised with so much love were sleeping under my own roof, planning my destruction? Chloe stayed until the end, helping me clear the dishes while Arthur and Caroline said goodbye to the last relatives. Before leaving, my granddaughter whispered to me, "Grandma, I'll come over early tomorrow morning. We have a lot more to talk about." Her words confirmed that what I had seen was only the tip of the iceberg of a much larger and more terrifying conspiracy. The next morning, I woke up at 5, 2 hours earlier than usual. I hadn't been able to sleep a wink. Every sound in the house startled me. Every creak of the floorboards made me think Arthur or Caroline was awake, planning the next step of their conspiracy. I dressed silently and went down to the kitchen to make them breakfast as I always did, pretending everything was normal. When Arthur came down at 7, I already had his scrambled eggs with ham ready, exactly as he liked them since he was a child. "Good morning, Mom," he said, giving me a kiss on the forehead. "Did you sleep well after your big party?" "Like a baby, my love," I lied as I served him coffee in his favorite mug. "Thank you for making my birthday so special." Every word burned my throat, but I had to act perfectly if I wanted to discover the full extent of their betrayal. Caroline appeared half an hour later, impeccably dressed in her work suit. "Mom, I have an important meeting at the bank this morning," she said, taking only a piece of toast. "Do you need me to take you anywhere today?" My heart raced. Could that meeting be part of their plan to access my accounts? "Don't worry, my love. Brenda is coming over to do my hair, and then we're going to have lunch together." Once my children left for work, I immediately called Brenda. "Can you come over right now? It's urgent, and I can't talk on the phone." My friend, who had known me for 30 years, immediately detected the desperation in my voice. "Eleanor, what's wrong? You sound terrible. Please, just come. I'll explain everything when you get here." Brenda arrived in 20 minutes with her hairdressing kit, But as soon as I closed the door, I collapsed into her arms. "Brenda, my children want to commit me to a nursing home to steal everything from me." The words came out between sobs I had been holding back all night. My friend held me tightly as I told her everything Chloe had shown me on the recordings. "Eleanor, this is terrible, but we can't act impulsively," Brenda told me after hearing the whole story. "We need solid proof and a plan to protect you." She was right. If I confronted Arthur and Caroline without enough evidence, they could speed up their plan or even use my paranoia as proof that I needed psychiatric care. The first thing we did was go to the bank. I told the manager, Mr. Wallace, that I wanted to review all the transactions in my accounts for the last 6 months. What we discovered left me breathless. There were strange withdrawals for small but constant amounts. $500 here, $1,000 there. When I asked Mr. Wallace, who had made these withdrawals, he showed me authorizations, apparently signed by me. "But I never authorized these withdrawals," I said, pointing at the signatures. Mr. Wallace looked at me with concern. "Mrs. Eleanor, your daughter Caroline brought these authorizations 3 months ago. She said you had asked her to handle some minor expenses to save you the trip to the bank." My blood ran cold. Caroline had been systematically stealing from me for months, forging my signature with the skill of an expert accountant. Brenda examined the forged signatures and then asked me to sign several times to compare. "Eleanor, these forgeries are very good, but not perfect. A handwriting expert could prove they're not yours." Mr. Wallace helped us print all the suspicious documents and suggested I immediately change all my passwords and block third-party access to my accounts. Back at home, I checked my safe. Several of my most valuable pieces of jewelry were gone. The diamond earrings my husband gave me for our 20th anniversary, the pearl necklace I inherited from my mother, the gold watch I received when I retired from my business. They had been very careful, taking only pieces I didn't wear frequently, so I wouldn't notice their absence immediately. Brenda helped me search the whole house for evidence of their betrayal. We found documents hidden in Arthur's study, copies of my will, appraisals of my house done by real estate agents, even brochures for private nursing homes with prices and services marked in red. It was like discovering they had been planning my funeral while I was still alive. In Caroline's room, we found something even worse. A notebook with detailed notes about my daily routine, my medications, my doctor's appointments, even observations about my mood on different days. Tuesday, Mom forgot where she put the keys, possible symptom. Friday, Mom repeated the same story twice. Note for the doctor. It was a meticulous record designed to build a false case of senile dementia. In the afternoon, when Chloe arrived as she had promised, I showed her everything we had discovered. My granddaughter turned pale. "Grandma, there's more. Last night, after the party, Arthur called Dr. Marcus. They're speeding up the plan. They're coming for you this Friday. Only 3 days left." "How do you know that?" I asked. Chloe showed me another recording on her phone. "I left my phone recording in the living room after you went to sleep. Listen to this." In the recording, Arthur's voice was clearly audible. "Doctor, we need to act fast. I think Mom suspects something. On Friday morning, we're going to create a situation that justifies her immediate commitment." Brenda took my hand. "Eleanor, we have 3 days to prepare the perfect defense, but we need to be smarter than them." My friend was right. All my life, I had been a woman who solved problems, who built solutions from nothing. This time would be no different. My own children had underestimated the woman who had raised them. Friday arrived like an announced storm. At 9 in the morning, just as Chloe had predicted, my doorbell rang. From the window, I saw Dr. Marcus's white car parked in my driveway next to Arthur's car. My heart was beating like a war drum, but this time it wasn't out of fear but determination. For 3 days, Brenda, Chloe, and I had meticulously prepared our counteroffensive. Arthur came in first with a smile that no longer fooled me. "Mom, Dr. Thorne came to give you a routine checkup. Chloe told us you felt a little confused last night, and we thought it would be good for him to check on you." My eyes immediately went to my granddaughter, who was standing behind him with an expression that looked guilty, but I knew it was part of our plan. "Confused? I don't understand what you're talking about, Arthur," I replied, feigning surprise. Dr. Marcus entered with his black briefcase and that fake smile he probably practiced in front of a mirror. "Mrs. Eleanor, we just want to make sure you're okay. Your children are very worried about you." Caroline appeared behind him, carrying a folder full of documents I recognized as the commitment papers. "Doctor, as we explained on the phone, Mom has been acting very strangely lately." Caroline began with that sweet voice that now made me nauseous. "Yesterday we found all the stove burners on, and she couldn't remember turning them on. She's also been talking to herself and seeing things that aren't there." Every lie flowed from her mouth with a facility that horrified me. Arthur nodded dramatically. "Also, doctor, last night we found her walking in the garden in her nightgown at 3 in the morning. When we asked her what she was doing, she said she was waiting for Dad, but he died 15 years ago." Their performances were so convincing that for a moment they almost made me doubt my own sanity. Dr. Marcus opened his briefcase and took out some forms. "Mrs. Eleanor, I'm going to ask you a few simple questions to assess your mental state. Can you tell me what day it is today?" "Friday, June 23rd. I answered correctly. "Do you know where you are?" "In my house. In the living room where my children are trying to steal my freedom." Arthur and Caroline exchanged nervous glances. "See, doctor, there's that paranoia we were telling you about," Caroline said quickly. "Mom thinks we're conspiring against her." The corrupt doctor took notes while feigning concern. "Mrs. Eleanor, why do you think your children want to harm you? They're only concerned about your well-being." At that moment, Brenda entered through the back door as we had planned. "Good morning, Eleanor. I came early for—" "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you had company." Her performance was also perfect. Arthur tensed up. "Who is this woman, and why does she have keys to the house?" "This is Brenda, my lifelong friend. She's always had keys in case of an emergency." Chloe approached the doctor with tears in her eyes. "Dr. Marcus, I have to confess something terrible. I lied to my parents about my grandmother's condition because they threatened me." Arthur grabbed her arm roughly. "What are you talking about, Chloe? Don't be ridiculous." But my granddaughter freed herself from his grip and continued. "Dad and Mom told me that if I didn't help them commit Grandma, they would cut off the money for my studies." Dr. Marcus began to sweat. "I don't understand what's happening here. I just came to do a routine medical evaluation." Caroline lost her composure for the first time. "Chloe, you're confused. No one threatened you. We just want what's best for your grandmother." But it was too late. Brenda had already taken out her phone and was recording the entire conversation. "Doctor," I said, rising from my chair with all the dignity I could muster, "could you explain to me why my children paid you $50,000 to fake a diagnosis of senile dementia?" The question landed like a bomb in the room. The doctor turned as pale as paper. "I don't know what you're talking about, ma'am." Arthur exploded with fury. "Mom, you're delusional. This proves exactly why you need specialized care." But I took out my phone and played the recording where he and Caroline discussed all the details of their plan with the corrupt doctor. Their own voices filled the room as irrefutable proof of their betrayal. "We have to speed up the process." Sandra's voice was heard from the speaker. "Mom is getting sharper every day, and if she keeps this up, we'll never be able to convince a doctor that she needs special care." Dr. Marcus tried to run out, but Brenda blocked the door. "Not so fast, doctor. The police are already on their way." Caroline lunged at me, trying to snatch the phone. "Give it to me. Those recordings are illegal." But Chloe stopped her. "Mom, stop it. It's over. Grandma knows everything." Arthur continued to deny everything until the end. "This is a giant misunderstanding. We would never do something like this." But his panicked face betrayed him completely. At that moment, we heard the sirens of police cars approaching my house. "My dear children," I said with a calm that surprised even myself, "I hope you enjoyed playing the part of a loving family, because your theatrical performance has just ended forever." The police officers entered my house led by Detective Kevin Russo, the same young man who shopped at the neighborhood store and was supposed to falsely testify about my mental state. But when I saw him in the dark blue uniform and shiny badge, I understood that he had been an undercover agent all along. "Mrs. Eleanor, I'm Detective Russo. We've been investigating this network of scams against senior citizens for 6 months. Arthur and Caroline were speechless when they saw that Kevin wasn't the bribed witness they expected, but a law enforcement officer. "Impossible," Caroline murmured. "You work at the corner store. We've known you for years." Kevin smiled as he took out his handcuffs. "Undercover work, ma'am. Your mother wasn't the first victim they tried to scam." The detective explained that they had been tracking Dr. Marcus for months. This corrupt doctor has participated in at least 12 similar cases in the last 2 years. He convinces greedy family members that they can obtain legal guardianship of their elderly relatives through false diagnoses. We already have evidence that he has stolen over $2 million in anticipated inheritances. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. An older woman entered my living room, escorted by another officer. She had gray hair and deep wrinkles, but her eyes were exactly like Arthur's. "Mom, I'd like to introduce you to Mrs. Grace Adler," said Detective Russo. "She is your first daughter-in-law, Arthur's first wife, and she was also a victim of this same scheme." My world tilted again. "Arthur was married before?" I asked, looking at my son with total disbelief. Grace approached me with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Eleanor, Arthur stole everything from me 5 years ago. He used the exact same plan. He convinced me I had senile dementia, committed me to a horrible nursing home, and took my house, my savings, even my late mother's jewelry." Arthur tried to interrupt, but Detective Russo silenced him. Grace was committed for 2 years in deplorable conditions, until an honest social worker discovered the irregularities in her case. When she got out, Arthur had already sold all her properties and disappeared. She has been looking for him ever since to get her money back. Caroline turned pale as Grace pointed directly at her. "And you, Caroline, were the one who forged all the documents for my commitment. I recognize your handwriting on the forms the detective showed me. My daughter denied it desperately. I've never seen this woman in my life." But Grace took out photos from her phone, which clearly showed Caroline leaving the nursing home where she had been committed. Detective Russo continued to reveal the extent of the conspiracy. "Arthur and Caroline are not just greedy siblings, Mrs. Eleanor. They are professional scammers who specialize in robbing senior citizens. Your son Arthur has been married 4 times, always to wealthy older women. Caroline works as an accountant, but she uses her access to financial information to identify potential victims." Another revelation hit me like a lightning bolt. "Did Chloe know all this?" I asked, looking at my granddaughter. The detective smiled. "Chloe came to us 3 months ago when she started suspecting her parents. She was the one who installed the security cameras and who helped us gather all the evidence." "Your granddaughter is a hero, Mrs. Eleanor." Arthur finally lost his composure completely. "This is all a setup. You can't prove anything." But Detective Russo took out a folder full of documents. "We have audio recordings, surveillance videos, forged documents, testimonies from previous victims, and bank records showing illegal transfers. Your criminal network is completely exposed." Grace sat next to me and took my hand. "Mrs. Eleanor, we also discovered that you are not the only current victim. There are 3 other older women in the city being set up for the same scheme. One of them is Mrs. Maria Sanchez, 82 years old, who lives alone with a considerable fortune. My heart broke thinking of other innocent women falling into the clutches of these predators. Caroline tried one last desperate attempt. "Mom, please, you know we love you. This is all a giant misunderstanding. We are your family, your blood." But her words no longer had any power over me. "You stopped being my family the day you decided to make me your victim," I replied with a coldness I didn't know I possessed. Detective Russo explained to us that the case went far beyond what we had imagined. This criminal group has connections with corrupt officials in the healthcare system, unscrupulous lawyers, and nursing home administrators who receive commissions for each forced admission. We're talking about a network that has operated for years without being detected. As they were taking Arthur and Caroline away in handcuffs, my son shouted at me from the door, "Mom, you're going to regret this. Without us, you're nothing." But for the first time in 70 years, I didn't feel a shred of guilt or sadness at his words. I had discovered that true love doesn't demand the sacrifice of one's own dignity, and that sometimes real family doesn't come from blood, but from those who genuinely care for our well-being. 3 weeks after the arrest, I found myself in the Central Courthouse, dressed in my best violet suit, the same one I had worn for the opening of my last restaurant. This time, it wasn't to celebrate a business achievement, but to see justice served after decades of deceit. The district attorney, Mr. Elias Vance, had built a solid case against the criminal network that had operated under my nose for years. The courtroom was filled with victims, family members, journalists, and curious onlookers. Grace Adler was sitting in the front row next to 3 other older women who had also been scammed by Arthur and Caroline. Mrs. Maria Sanchez, 82 years old, had been rescued just in time before they could commit her. Her case was identical to mine. Seemingly loving children who planned to steal her fortune through a forced commitment. When they brought Arthur in, handcuffed and dressed in an orange prison uniform, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. It was hard to recognize the man I had raised with so much love in this criminal who had devastated so many lives. His eyes no longer had the fake warmth he had perfected over the years. There was only resentment and contempt. Caroline entered next, also in handcuffs, but maintaining the cold composure that had always characterized her. During the 3 weeks of investigation, it had become clear that she was the mastermind behind the entire operation. Her experience as an accountant had given her access to the financial information of dozens of senior citizens, and she had used that data to select potential victims. The prosecutor, Elias Vance, presented the evidence meticulously. Your Honors, for 5 years, the defendants Arthur Vance and Caroline Vance operated a criminal network that stole over $4 million from vulnerable senior citizens. They used family love as a weapon to destroy innocent lives. His words resonated in the courtroom like hammer blows of justice. The recordings Chloe had captured were played for the court. Hearing my children's voices again, planning my destruction in that room full of people, gave me a different perspective. They didn't hurt me as they had before. Now, they were simply evidence of criminals being exposed. On Friday morning, we're going to create a situation that justifies her immediate commitment. Arthur's voice was heard from the speakers. Dr. Marcus Thorne was also being tried simultaneously. His testimony revealed chilling details about how the network operated. They paid me between $40,000 and $60,000 for each false diagnosis. He confessed before the judge. I had pre-made forms with symptoms of dementia that I would copy and paste into the medical reports. It was a very lucrative business. Grace Adler took the stand as the main witness. Arthur courted me for 6 months before proposing marriage. She testified in a firm voice. He was charming, attentive, the perfect man. But once he moved into my house, he began to isolate me from my friends, to convince me I was losing my memory, to make me doubt my own reality. Her testimony was identical to what I had begun to experience in my last months with Arthur and Caroline. Mrs. Maria Sanchez also testified about how Caroline had used her position at the accounting office to access her financial information. She knew exactly how much money I had, where I had it invested. She even knew the details of my will before I had ever met her personally, she declared to the court. When her brother Arthur began visiting me as a family friend, they already had a complete plan to steal everything from me. Detective Kevin Russo presented additional evidence they had discovered during the investigation. We found documents in Caroline Vance's house showing a list of over 20 senior citizens with their financial data, daily routines, and level of social isolation. It was like a catalog of potential victims organized by profitability. The courtroom filled with murmurs of indignation. When it was time for Arthur and Caroline to speak in their defense, their lawyers tried to argue that it had all been a misunderstanding, that they genuinely cared for the well-being of their victims. But the mountain of evidence was irrefutable. Arthur finally stood up and looked directly at me. "Mom, I never wanted to hurt you," he said with fake tears that no longer deceived me. "We just wanted to secure your future." Caroline, on the other hand, maintained her coldness until the end. "I regret nothing," she declared to the judge. "Older people are eventually going to die and leave their money to someone. We just sped up the process." Her total lack of remorse confirmed that I had made the right decision in turning them over to justice. The judge, the Honorable Raul Fernandez, delivered the sentences with appropriate severity. Arthur Vance, for the crimes of aggravated fraud, forgery of documents, and financial abuse of the elderly, I sentence you to 15 years in prison, without the possibility of parole for the first 8 years." Arthur collapsed in his chair upon hearing the sentence. "Caroline Vance, as the mastermind of this criminal operation, and for the same crimes plus organized criminal conspiracy, I sentence you to 20 years in prison, without the possibility of parole for the first 12 years. Caroline received her sentence without showing any emotion, as if it were a business outcome that had gone wrong. Dr. Marcus Thorne received 10 years in prison and the permanent revocation of his medical license. The corrupt officials who had facilitated the illegal commitments were also sentenced to prison terms, ranging from 5 to 8 years. When I left the courthouse, surrounded by Chloe, Brenda, and the other victims who had found justice, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced in years. The reporters asked me how I felt, and my answer was simple. Today, justice has shown that no one is above the law, not even family. 6 months after the trial, I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, without the crushing weight of fear I had carried for so long. The sun's rays streamed through the white lace curtains I had sewn myself years ago, illuminating the room where I now slept peacefully, knowing that no one was planning to steal my freedom while I rested. I went down to the kitchen and made coffee for 2 people, as I had started doing every morning since Chloe moved in with me. My granddaughter had decided to transfer her medical studies to the local university to be with me during my healing process. "I don't want you to be alone after everything you've been through, Grandma," she had told me. "Besides, I can study just as well here, and I have the best teacher of resilience living under the same roof." Chloe appeared in the kitchen in her pink robe and bunny slippers, exactly as she had when she was a little girl staying over for the weekend. "Good morning, Grandma. How did you sleep?" "Like a queen, my love," I replied, pouring her coffee into the mug that had her name hand-painted on it, a gift I had given her for her 15th birthday. No nightmares, no startling awake, no fear. Every day I sleep better. During breakfast, we reviewed the emails that continued to arrive from other victims of similar scams. After the trial, my story had become well known throughout the region, and many older people wrote to me asking for advice or telling me their own experiences with greedy family members. I had decided to turn my pain into purpose, helping others going through similar situations. "Grandma," another letter from Mrs. Grace arrived. Chloe told me, showing me an envelope with familiar handwriting. She says she has her house back and that next month she's going to open a bakery with the money they returned to her. Grace had become a close friend after the trial. We shared not only the experience of having been victims of Arthur, but also the joy of having found justice and a new beginning. At 10 in the morning, Brenda arrived for our weekly ritual of coffee and conversation. "Eleanor, you look more radiant every day," she said, hugging me at the door. "It's like you've shed years since you freed yourself from that burden." She was right. The mirrors in my house reflected a different woman. My eyes had a sparkle again. My smile was genuine. My posture was upright and confident. We sat on the terrace, surrounded by the plants I had been neglecting for the past few years without realizing it. Now my garden was blooming again, with red roses, white geraniums, and new varieties of flowers Chloe had helped me plant. "You know what the strangest thing is?" I told Brenda as I looked at my flowers. "I don't miss Arthur and Caroline at all. I thought I would feel sadness or emptiness, but I only feel relief." Brenda nodded understandingly. "It's normal, Eleanor. When someone hurts you that deeply, love transforms into self-protection. Your mother's heart did what it had to do to survive." Her words reassured me because for months I had wondered if it was normal not to feel pain for the absence of my children. In the afternoon, I went to my first appointment with the psychologist Detective Russo had recommended. "Mrs. Eleanor, it's important that you process everything you've been through," he had told me. "The trauma of family betrayal can have lasting effects if not treated properly." I had initially resisted the idea of therapy, but Chloe convinced me it was part of my full recovery. The psychologist, a gentleman named Robert Hughes, no relation to the corrupt doctor, was helping me understand that my experience had not only been a financial scam, but also systematic psychological abuse. "Your children used very sophisticated manipulation techniques," he explained during our sessions. "The fact that you managed to detect and stop their plan demonstrates extraordinary mental strength." Oh, on weekends, I had started receiving visits from women who had read about my case in the newspapers. My living room would fill with ladies of different ages who came to share their own stories of abusive family members or to ask for advice on suspicious situations. I had become, without planning it, a sort of informal counselor for victims of financial abuse. Mrs. Eleanor, a 60-year-old woman, had told me last week, "My son always asks me for loans but never pays me back. After hearing your story, I realized they might not be loans, but theft." I helped her understand that real family love does not require constant financial sacrifices and encouraged her to set clear boundaries with her son. One afternoon, while organizing the family photographs I had kept in boxes for months, I found pictures of Arthur and Caroline's birthdays when they were children. For a moment, I felt a pang of nostalgia, remembering the innocent little ones I had raised with so much love. But then I remembered the recordings of their voices planning my destruction, and I put the photographs away for good. Chloe found me in the study with the boxes of photos. "Are you okay, Grandma?" "Perfectly fine, my love," I replied, closing the last box. I was just saying goodbye to ghosts from the past. That night, we took all the photographs of Arthur and Caroline to the backyard and burned them in a small ceremonial fire. As the flames consumed the false memories, I felt as if I were releasing the last residue of pain I had been carrying inside. A month later, I made a decision that filled me with joy. I donated half of my fortune to a foundation that helps elderly victims of abuse. "I want my money to protect others, not to tempt the greedy," I explained to my lawyer. With the other half, I established an educational fund for Chloe and other young people who, like her, had the courage to do the right thing even when it was difficult. Last night, Chloe and I were sitting on the porch watching the stars when she asked me a question that took me by surprise. "Grandma, do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had never discovered Dad and Mom's plan?" The question made me reflect deeply. "Chloe, I think it would have been a life of ever-shrinking illusions until I became a prisoner in my own existence. I would have lost not only my money and my house, but also my dignity, my decision-making ability, and ultimately, my identity. The alternative reality I imagined gave me chills. Instead," I continued, "these last 2 years have been the most authentic and fulfilling of my entire life. I have known the genuine love of people like you, Brenda, Grace, and all the brave women who have come into my world. I have discovered a strength I didn't know I possessed, and I have found a purpose that goes beyond my own survival. This morning, as I write this epilogue in my journal, I can see Chloe in the garden out the window, planting new flowers for the coming spring. In a few hours, Brenda will arrive for our weekly coffee, and in the afternoon, I will receive a group of social work students who want to learn about my experience for their thesis on elder protection. Tomorrow, I will visit the courthouse to testify in another case similar to mine, where a family is trying to recover their mother from the clutches of abusive children. Next week, I will give a lecture at the university on warning signs in toxic family relationships. Next month, the foundation will host its 2nd annual symposium on elder protection. My calendar is full, my purpose is clear, and my heart is at peace. I have transformed the most painful betrayal of my life into a mission of protection and empowerment for others. Every day that I spend helping someone else escape similar situations, I feel that my suffering gains meaning and becomes collective strength. Today, at 72 years old, I am not alone out of abandonment, but by choice. I am not at peace out of ignorance, but out of wisdom gained through pain. And I am not free by luck, but by the courage to face the truth and fight for my dignity. This is my life now, authentic, purposeful, and completely my own.